Welcome to Here Comes the Boom, a Kentucky recruiting podcast brought to you by KSR and KSR Plus. I'm your host, Jacob Polacheck. Before we get into it, be sure to subscribe to KSR Plus, subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, and let's talk some recruiting. We got a good show for you today. Last week, right after I finished filming our show, we got some big news with Nate Ament, a five-star forward out of Virginia, setting his Kentucky official visit. So let's talk about it. Kentucky's getting the first official visit for Nate Ament. That's pretty surprising because you've got schools like Virginia, North Carolina, Duke, schools close to home that have been pursuing him for a while. So to get that first official visit is very significant. I know I got a lot of questions about what's better, getting the first official visit, getting the last official visit. Do you want to be somewhere in the middle? I know that with guys like Tunde Yesufu and Nico Bundalo, who we'll talk about later, they're getting the last official visit for them. Getting the first official visit for Nate Ament is big, though. I think it all depends on a player-by-player basis. You want to get that first official visit if you're worried that a player is going to commit before they go on all their official visits. So when you're Kentucky, you get to be the first pitch to them. You may not land him on that visit, but you ensure that you're going to get him on a visit, where some other guys, maybe they commit on that first or second visit and you don't get them. I think that's why they brought Tunde and Nico for that last visit, because they're confident that they'll take all their official visits. But Nate Ament, five-star small forward out of Virginia, top 5 in the country. I know Jamie Shaw, who we're going to talk to later, he has Nate Ament possibly contending for the number 1 pick in 2026. I know AJ Dibansa, we've talked about on this show. Kentucky's out for him, and he's kind of been the consensus number 1 pick option in this 2026 draft class, 2025 recruiting class. But if there's anyone that can contend for that number 1 pick, I know you got Cam Boozer, you got Darren Peterson. Nate Ament should be in that conversation. And we're going to talk to Jamie a little later about Nate's game. Let's talk about some other official visits. I know we've got some guys who have already set OVs. We talked about Nate Ament. Another guy that's set to come on campus in less than a month, Caleb Wilson. He's coming on September 13th. He was a guy that really impressed at Peach Jam, playing with the Night Riders alongside the Boozer twins. He's in that top 5, top 10 conversation. He's a power forward, but can really stretch the floor. Caleb, we've talked about it on this show before. Arkansas is a big contender with him. He's got a lot of schools involved, but Kentucky's getting him on campus. We've talked about it before, so I don't need to go into too much detail, but keep an eye out for Caleb Wilson. One interesting note, I've talked about a potential transfer. I talked to the head coach at Holy Innocents, his high school, and they believe that he's coming back. So I don't expect him to go to a prep school, Montverde, IMG, any of those. The expectation is that he'll remain at Holy Innocents in Atlanta, Georgia. And I know Georgia Tech's involved, and they're a close school. He's a very high academic student. Georgia Tech, a very high academic school. So that's a school that you might want to watch out for. But Arkansas continues to be a school that I hear a lot with Caleb Wilson. Darius Acuff is already committed there, and him and Caleb have a close relationship. So that's a school to watch out for. Another player that Kentucky fans should be well aware of, Malachi Moreno. He's set to visit for Big Blue Madness. I believe that's October 12th. Joe Tipton from On3 came on to our show to talk about Malachi, and he predicted Malachi to be the first commit in Kentucky's 2025 class. So does he commit before that October date? Potentially. We might have him there as a commit. Indiana's still heavily involved. He's got a lot of schools on his list, but Indiana and Kentucky are the two that are kind of standing apart from the rest. And that will be one to watch. He was another guy that there were a lot of rumors about him potentially going to IMG Academy in Florida, but KSR's Jack Pilgrim was able to confirm that he will be staying at Great Crossing. He's staying in Kentucky. That's significant. You have a guy real close to home. I would expect right now, I think Kentucky's the favorite for Malachi, and getting him on campus will be significant. The other guy that set an official visit, Moreno Mullins, shooting guard out of Indiana. We've talked about it before. Just like Malachi, it seems like the two schools that have been in contention for Braylon are Kentucky and Indiana. Another school that we've heard of late is UConn. UConn seems to be making a push for Moreno Mullins. He's got a whole lot of official visits planned. Take your time with that one. October 26th. So we've got some time before we expect a commitment. I know that he's got a lot of visits set up. You can find those over on the KS board. KSR Zach Gagan reported all of his official visits, his updated official visit schedule. One thing that's interesting about Moreno Mullins is he's no longer taking an official visit to Alabama. Now, what that means for Jasper Johnson, we'll see. Jasper's expected to make his commitment later this month, and we're going to talk about him later. So we'll see what happens there, but no more Alabama official visit. That's something to keep an eye on. Now, who else could be setting official visits? Let's run through the list. We've got a lot of names. Tunde Yesufu, we talked to him before. He is expecting Kentucky to be the last official visit as per request of the staff. They want to be the last visit. So he hasn't set a date yet, but expect that sometime in the fall. Chris Sinak just cut his list to 12, five-star power forward, one of the best power forwards in the country. He's a top 10 kid, maybe top 5, depending on the outlet. I talked to him over the weekend after he cut his list, and he told me that he's planning to take official visits sometime in September and October. He previously said he was targeting a commitment during the early signing period in November, but that's more likely going to be sometime in January or February. That's when I'd expect a commitment. So, Chris, expect an official visit September, October, decision January, February. Kentucky's in the mix. I expect them to get an official visit, but there's a lot of schools involved. LSU, Houston, those are two schools that have been mentioned for a long time. Eric Reeby, a guy that we've talked about on this show, 7-foot center. With the talk that we've had about Malachi, I'm not sure where things stand with Eric Reeby. I still expect him to set an official visit for Kentucky sometime in the next week or so. Expect that to be posted soon. But if Malachi commits sooner rather than later, they're probably out of it for Eric Reeby. It's going to come down. Kentucky's not going to take both Malachi Moreno and Eric Reeby. They're going to take one of the two. I think they're in a good position to land one of the two. So if Malachi commits soon, Eric Reeby probably falls out of the mix. But if things drag on, maybe things pick up with Eric Reeby and we see an official visit set. Another guy that we've talked about on this show, Caden Lewis, a shooting guard out of Pennsylvania. He took an unofficial visit to Kentucky in the early summer, got his offer there. He's talked before about setting his Kentucky official visit, but he hasn't announced the date yet. I know he's taken recent visits to Duke and Syracuse, so expect an official visit to Kentucky. I've said it before on this show. Expect that sometime in October. We should see a date posted probably in the next 2 weeks, I'd say. So be on the lookout for that. Nico Bundalo, another power forward in this class, 4-star. He's one of those guys we talked about earlier where Kentucky wants him to be the last official visit. I expect that to happen. Expect official visits sometime, I believe September and October. So be on the lookout for that. Now, two other guys I want to talk about at the guard position. Michael Brown, talked about him on this show before. I was told that Kentucky is expected to get an official visit. I know that there was some talk about Louisville being the favorite, some other schools involved, but Kentucky is in the mix. They offered him. They're expecting to get an official visit. I expect that date to be set sometime in the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks. And he's a name to watch out for. It's been quiet around him. I know his mom handles most of the scheduling. So official visits should be posted soon, and Kentucky should be on that list. Last guy I want to talk about, Darren Peterson. Talked about him on this show, saying that I don't think he's going to get on campus at Kentucky. I'm still not sure that he's going to get on campus at Kentucky. I know Kansas is making a strong push. Just took an official visit to USC. He's got about, I believe, 8 schools involved. He's an Adidas kid. It's going to be tough to get him to a Nike school like Kentucky. I was told he wants to commit sometime October, November, and Kentucky's supposed to get a visit in October. We'll see if that happens. There hasn't been a date announced. So it's a wait and see approach with Darren Peterson. If he gets on campus, then things might pick up, but I'll believe it when I see it. I'm still not really expecting him to take an official visit to Kentucky. And that's basically where things stand with official visits. Well, we've got some big news here on Here Comes the Boom. As we're filming this podcast, On3's Joe Tipton reports that Malachi Moreno, in-state recruit, will commit on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I'm going to leave the floor to Joe. Joe, what do you think about his recruitment? Where do things stand right now?
Yeah, Jacob, this is exciting. He's going to be coming off the board later this week. Malachi tells me that he will be making his decision at Great Crossing High School on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. He's got a top 8, but this recruitment really came down to Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio State. Those were kind of the big 3 in his recruitment. He's visited all 3 programs, but ultimately schools like Kentucky and Indiana have been generating the most traction for his commitment as he kind of nears this decision. But, I mean, this is a guy, number 1 ranked center in the country, a top 25 overall prospect, will be coming off the board on Friday.
Joe, we're going to have Jamie Shaw on soon to talk about his game, but I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts on Malachi's game? And if he does choose Kentucky, what will he be bringing to that program?
Yeah, Malachi is kind of a traditional big man, great hands, great size, can protect the rim, finish around the basket, kind of play out of the dunker spot. His range is still expanding, but just a really good player, really solid player, a great kid, just a really high character guy, and just a really good overall player no matter where he lands.
Well, Joe, you came on our show recently, a couple of weeks ago, and you said that if you had to choose who Kentucky's first 2025 commitment would be, it would be Malachi Moreno. You got the timing right. Now let's see if he actually chooses Kentucky. We'll find that out on Friday. Joe, thank you for coming on such short notice. And now let's talk to Jamie Shaw about his game. Thank you again.
Absolutely, Jacob. Anytime, man.
All right. We've had a crazy show. Malachi Moreno, his announcement coming Friday. Now let's bring on 3 basketball analyst Jamie Shaw to talk about Malachi and some of these other targets in Kentucky's class. Jamie, thank you for joining us.
Jacob, I appreciate it.
So let's get right into it and talk about Malachi. What stands out to you about Malachi's game? What do you think are his greatest strengths as a player?
Man, so when you're looking at Malachi Moreno, what sticks out is his size. I mean, obviously, you sit there and look at him. He's pushing 7 feet tall. He's got great length. What's unique about his game is the fluidity that he has. He moves in a way that a lot of 7-footers do not. So while his performances right now are kind of inconsistent at times, he needs to put on weight and do all that, the size and the athletic fluidity put him kind of as a step up long-term wise as you continue to put weight on him, as he continues to get stronger, gets up to the speed of the game and stuff. Earlier this year, I watched him at the Beach Ball Classic in South Carolina. Great crossing. He set the tournament record, or he came in second, the tournament record, 4-day record in rebounding. He also came in second, the tournament record for single game rebounding with I think 25 or 26 rebounds. Playing big is huge for him. And in a class in 2025 where the 5 position, the traditional center position is a little bit down long term, he checks off a lot of boxes that you want to bring in with the athletic fluidity, with his tracking the ball, with his size, that you can build upon and grow into a very serviceable, if not very good, big man.
And looking at the On3 industry rankings, Jamie and On3 have Malachi higher than any of the other services out there. Another player that Jamie and On3 have higher than the rest of the industry is Nate Ament, set to visit Kentucky for an official visit later this month. Jamie, what stands out to you about his game? And you have him top 3 in the class. What makes him such a special player?
Well, looking at why he's so high is because of the potential outcomes that he has. I'm actually writing an article about it right now that I'm about to put out after we get off of this. But the potential long-term outcomes that Nate Ament has as a player is pretty robust, given his positional size, the skill set that he has, the athletic versatility that he has, the positional versatility that he has. There are a lot of different pathways he can take to being a very good player at the highest levels of basketball. Looking at him right now, 6'9". What first stood out to me about Nate Ament's game is his passing. He makes quick reads. He's able to deliver on target, on time, left hand, right hand in traffic, off the live dribble, and just make excellent reads. He shot over 40% from three this summer on the Adidas circuit. He can play as the primary guy in the pick and roll. He can also play as the pick and pop guy. He can get his done in the mid range. And his game is just kind of every time you watch him play, he adds something to it. He also averaged 10 rebounds a game and over 2 blocks per game during the Adidas championships as well. So a 6'9" player who has the perimeter skill set that he has, but also the ability to score, create open looks in the mid post, and then defend and rebound. There are a lot of different pathways. There are a lot of different positional top end pathways that he can take, which is, why the entry with him is so high toward the top of the class.
Well, you're higher than the industry on Nate Ament. Another player that you're higher than the industry on, that seems to be the trend of today's show, Chris Sinak, who just included Kentucky on his list. He's expected to take visits sometime in the fall. What do you see in his game that makes him a top 5 player in the class?
Well, I think that this is one that Kentucky fans should monitor relatively closely as it continues to go. I'm not necessarily certain he's going to make an early decision. However, Kentucky fans should pay attention to Chris Sinak's recruitment. He is, again, kind of like Nate Ament. He's got the positional size at 6'10", but it's the robust skill set that allows for different pathways that he could take as he reaches toward his ceiling. Very fluid athlete. He's been ranked in the top 25 for on-3 for over a year now. What initially put him up there was the fact that he, at 6'9" at the time, 6'10" now, could sit down, slide his feet on the perimeter, and guard in the open court, guard perimeter-based players in the open court, as well as knock down corner threes. At 6'9", the ability to do that, there's a lot of, there's a place for you in basketball at the highest levels. Now, as he's continued to progress, he's now able to put the ball on the floor. He can create in the mid-post. He can push the break. He can step into threes. He can shoot threes off of movement, pin down screens, and all that type of stuff as well. And his game continues to expand. It's not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. He's going to have to get stronger, just like Nate Ament. Going to have to continue to get stronger and nail down kind of positionally what directions he's going in. But the versatility is there. As you're watching these highlights here, he's doing stuff on the block, doing stuff in the mid-post. He's got a great length and athletic fluidity. So there's a wonderful canvas to paint on as he continues to grow. But also a lot of the traits that he has naturally, a lot of the stuff that you cannot teach, are things that are coveted at the highest levels of basketball. He could just continue to get better each time you see him.
Well, there was a lot of talk in July around that Peach Jam time about how Mark Pope was at Adidas. He was at Puma. He was at Nike. A big guy that he wanted to see at Puma was Chris Sinak, and a guy that he wanted to see at Adidas was Michael Brown. Kentucky hasn't been talked about a lot with him, but I'm expecting him to set an official visit there. So what stands out to you about Michael's game?
Michael currently number 2 point guard in the on-3 150. He's got good feel. He's able to score. What kind of stands out to him, amongst other point guards, is his ability to shoot the ball. He's got deep range, and he's got the ability to create open looks. He's got good footwork, great balance. He can use his dribble to set up his shooting, and he's fearless, and he has a lot of confidence. There's a lot there. He had multiple 30, 40-point games throughout the Adidas circuit, playing with T-Motive, North Carolina. He just transferred to the Academy down in Florida. Would expect his recruitment to kind of elongate, maybe toward the late signing period as well. But it'll be interesting to see how things continue to transpire. He has some NBA fans talking to NBA scouts and stuff in his game because of his offensive output, and just kind of the smooth nature of his ability to create scoring opportunities really sticks out.
Well, it's a fun episode when we can have Joe Tipton and Jamie Shaw on the show. Jamie, thank you for joining us today. It's always great to have you on, and we hope to see you again soon.
Jacob, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, today's final thought, Jasper Johnson. We've talked about him on this show a lot. we've talked about Kentucky and some potential optimism there. I'm starting to think that, and from what I'm hearing, Alabama has all the momentum heading into this commitment, which is expected in the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks. He struggled over the summer on the Nike UIBL circuit. He shot 38% from the field, 27% from three, and 41 assists to 46 turnovers. This is a miss. He is a 5-star player, but there are a lot of good guards out there. So if he doesn't choose Kentucky, I wouldn't sound the alarm bells yet, especially if they're able to land Malachi Moreno on Friday. They'll have that positive recruiting momentum going. But right now, the momentum is shifting in Alabama's direction, and only time will tell. I'm not completely ruling out Kentucky. He is the hometown kid after all, but I'm not expecting Kentucky to be the pick. We'll find out soon. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to KSR Plus, subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, and we'll see you again soon.